Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Good. I'm the Chief Education Technology Officer for PBS Western Reserve, and we're so excited for you to be here this evening for our Cyberchase Green It Up Session 1. Tonight we're going to be tonight's virtual exploration is going to be, we're looking at pollinators and flower gardens, and that's all connected with our friends from Cyberchase. So you're probably asking what exactly is and those characters from Cyberchase. And if you're not familiar with Cyberchase, it's America's longest running math series. It's engaged millions of children in the fun and challenge of math and STEM, believe it or not, for more than 17 years. It's an animated series. It tells a story of a team of curious kids, and they're summoned into cyberspace to outwit and outsmart the villain hacker using math and problem solving skills. So Cyberchase basically proves that math is everywhere and anyone can use it to make the world better. We air on PBS Western Reserve, your local PBS television station. We broadcast Cyberchase on Sundays at 8 a.m. So check that out. And part of that process became this Cyberchase Green It Up. And Cyberchase Green It Up is kind of a look at through the eyes of those kids from Cyberchase, exactly kind of the environmental issues. And so we're going to look tonight at pollinators, and we're going to look at flower gardens. So let's first take a look at pollinators. And so as you're progressing, if you want to look and find where your chat button is on the bottom of your screen, I'm going to ask a series of questions. So think about those for a minute. So the first question is, what exactly are pollinators? And you'll see on your screen there are several different types of pollinators. So for instance, there are butterflies, and there are bees, different types of bees also. We've got hummingbirds that are wonderful pollinators and very interesting to watch. And then we even have bats. And I'll be totally upfront with you. I'm not great with bats, but I'm willing to accept them as a pollinator. So they're all pollinators. So as you think about that, can you think of any other pollinators we might have missed? I know we've talked about different animals in some of our in-person settings. So just think about that as we think about pollinators. And so then as you think about being a pollinator, then what exactly does a pollinator do? I think a pollinator makes sure, and we'll learn a little bit more, but I think they have something to do with the fruits and the flowers, exactly, and how they flower and how fruit comes around. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then where do you think those pollinators live? And last but not least, are they important? Well, all of our Cyberchase Green It Up sessions start with this big idea, and they're always we'll always talk a little bit about this big idea. So think about these big ideas as we progress through this session. So first of all, remember that pollinators are animals that help spread pollen from one plant to another so that more plants can grow. Pollinators are necessary for basically the growth of fruit and vegetables and most flowers. And the scary part about it is pollinators are starting to lose their habitat. And that's a big word, right? We don't all know what that word is, but a habitat is where they call home. So for instance, if you're watching this from home, where you're watching from is your habitat. So let's think about that for a minute. And let's follow these kids from Cyberchase as they talk about bats and pollinators and all those good things.
See? Hungry bats come to my garden to drink the nectar from my apple cactus flowers.
Is this gonna happen all day, Nezzy?
Maybe. And don't call me Nessie. When they drink, they get pollen from the flowers on themselves. They don't mean to, but they do. That's the gold dusty stuff. Then they carry the pollen from one flower to another. That's pollination.
Bats are so cool.
Not looking.
I'm confused. You have flowers, then you get the fruit?
Watch. Over time, the pollinated flower grows into a cactus apple.
So, no bats means no pollination.
And if there's no pollination, then there are no cactus apples, which means...
No cactus apple juice. I just need a moment.
So let's think about this for a minute. The bats were really important to Bridget, and a lot of that has to do with it was very important for the pollination process. We talked quite a bit about the pollination process, and they kind of showed it in that video. So I want you to think for a minute, and you might not be out there, but just talk amongst yourselves when you're watching this video is, what did the bats do to help the cactus? Think about that for a minute, and how important it was for those Cyberchase folks to keep those bats around. How did the bats pollinate those plants? I think that's very interesting, and we'll do a little activity here in a minute that kind of replicates that. And then what's keeping those bats away? So think about that for a minute. We're going to be bats here in a minute, and I'm going to change my virtual background off here. And I'm going to move to this camera, and I'm going to take my virtual background off. And we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to have a little activity here. So hopefully you can hear me. I think everyone can hear me. So our little activity, I'm going to flip this over to keep us a little cleaner. And we're going to be bats. So let's talk for a minute about these bowls right here are going to be our flowers. So we're going to take these flowers, and instead of being necessarily bats, I've got a couple different spices that you have from home. This situation, I have some cinnamon, and I'm going to put that in one of these containers, just a little bit. I've got some pepper, and you can see that's colored black. So you've got a nice red spice. I've got a black spice, and then I've got a little salt. I'm going to throw some salt in there. So we've got a nice mix of colors. So now what I want to do is I'm going to be a pollinator. So I'm going to have this empty cup over here. But meanwhile, I've got another cup that has a wet paper towel. And you know what? Just like that bat was, I'm going to take my toothpick that you see right here, and I'm going to wet that toothpick. And what I want to do is try to collect as much. I'm going to get my toothpick nice and wet. And so I'm going to try to collect as much pollen as I can and put it into my bin right here. And I'm going to keep trying to collect pollen, and I'm going to get this toothpick wet again. And I'm going to try to collect some more pollen here. And I'm still trying to collect some pollen from these flowers, right? So here I've got my flowers, and I'm going to just keep trying in a short period of time. And I'm going to tap my nose and get everything all taken care of. And I'm going to take a minute here, and I'm going to say, wow, I wonder what the difference is. And it's kind of a hard exercise to do, but what you can see is on my flower, you'll see that I've got a little bit of red spice in there. I've got a little black spice in there, and I've got a little bit of the white spice in there. So that really gives you an example when we talk about how bats or bees or hummingbirds pollinate a flower. You can see that that's pretty much how that happens, that they go from flower to flower, and as they go to the different flowers, they're going to obviously go back and forth. So let me switch real quick here and get rid of my screen share, because I showed that to you as a screen share, and I apologize for that. And we're going to go back to I'm just going to stop my share. Let me just stop my share. There we go. So now you can see I've got my setup here, and you can see when I did my pollination, and if you follow along with those questions, you'll see that my spices, I've got some black spice, some white spice, and some red spice in there. So what I'd like you to do, and we're going to go back to a screen share here, and I want you first of all to think about why those bats were so important and all that stuff about when we talked about what Bridget was doing. We also want to, and let me get this up on the screen real quick here. Here's this activity that we talked about. But what I want you to do is, if you've got your activity and you've got your spices out, or maybe you did some confetti, or maybe you did some pom-poms, lay that all out, and I'm going to give you 60 seconds, and I want you to do the same activity that I did. And I want you to go from all the different spices, and I want you to have your main spice here, where you're going to try to be a bat. So let's take a quick moment. And I went far. So hurry up now. You want to be a bat. So you're trying to move the pollen between flowers. So you've got about 45 seconds now. So try to go to each of the flowers just like the bat would do, or just like a bee would do, and keep collecting that pollen. And let's see what happens at the end. Let's see what happens with your cups when you're done. Both your flowers, which are your flowers, if you see the flowers over here, but also the flower that you have as you're collecting your pollen. So just keep working at that. You've got about 20 more seconds. You've got about 15 more seconds. And let's see how good you are as a bat. 3, 2, 1, and there's the time. So what I'd like you to do is I'd really like you to look at what you've got in front of you. Look at your flowers and see if some of the cinnamon spilled into the pepper, see if some of the salt spilled into the cinnamon, and think about what that means. That's that pollination process. So when you became that bat, or you became that hummingbird, or you became that bee, you did it, and you really showed, you became and mixed that pollen together. Let's take a moment and look at some bats. And I told you before, I'm not a big bat fan, and I'm gonna come back over here, and I'm gonna come back to my camera, and I'm gonna choose my background real quick here. And let's take a look at bats.
So what are we going to learn today?
Bats.
You mean bats? Or bats? Or bats?
No, bats. Bats are mammals. They have furry bodies. Their wings are really webbed hands with thin skin stretched from their long fingers to their back legs. Bats are the only mammals that fly. A few other mammals can glide, but bats are true flapping flyers. The fastest bat can fly at more than 30 miles per hour. One of the biggest bats is the golden-capped fruit bat. It's a fruit-eating bat with a wingspan of more than 5 feet. The smallest bat, and indeed the world's smallest mammal, is the hog-nosed or bumblebee bat. It weighs less than 2 grams and is the size of a bumblebee. Worldwide, there are more than 1,200 different kinds of bats. Bats sleep during the day and feed at night. Most bats find their food using echolocation. They make rapid, high-frequency sounds. These sound waves bounce off their prey and travel back to the bat's ears. The bats hear the echo and find their dinner. Some bats eat things like fruit or frogs or small birds, but most bats eat insects. Little brown bats can catch 250 mosquito-sized insects in 15 minutes. A bat eats about half its own weight in insects each night. If you weighed 100 pounds, that would be like eating 50 one-pound pizzas every day. Many bats live in colonies. Their homes are called roosts. Just like you and me, bats need shelter from the weather, protection from enemies, and a place to rest. Some live in caves or trees, but others live under bridges or inside old buildings. Pups or baby bats are born in the summer. In the winter, some bats migrate to warmer climates, others hibernate. Scientists study bats because a lot of these small flying mammals are threatened. Many bats are in trouble because people disturb them while they're roosting or remove them from their homes. So if you find a bat, it's important to leave it alone. Bats are also in trouble from a new disease called white nose syndrome. So if you go into a cave, change your clothes and clean your shoes and gear so you don't spread disease from one cave to another.
But bats can be scary.
Well, movies and TV shows haven't been very nice to bats. But in China, bats are symbols of good luck. Bats are a really important part of our ecosystem. They eat lots of insects and help pollinate crops and spread seeds. Humans need bats, and sadly, about 25% of the world's bats are threatened with extinction. So we need to do more to protect these amazing animals.
So I know we had a chance to really learn about bats and how much food they eat and where they live and all those great things. And I hope you had an opportunity to appreciate bats a little bit more than I do. But that's all right, because we're going to take an opportunity here to look at a book called Give Bees a Chance. And in this book, much like I am with bats, we're a little nervous about bees. So you're not sure whether to high five bees or run away from them. Well, maybe you shouldn't high five them, but you definitely don't have to run away from them, right? Give Bees a Chance is for anyone who doesn't quite appreciate how extra special and important bees are to the world and even to humankind. Besides making yummy honey, they help plants grow fruits and vegetables, and most bees wouldn't even hurt a fly, well, unless it was in self-defense. So let's take a closer look at, I'm going to get this video started here. And let's take a moment to talk about Give Bees a Chance. And this is Words and Pictures by Bethany Barton. Give Bees a Chance. This is a great book. Goes over all different types of bees, from the mining bee to the sweat bee, to the European honeybee, to the common bumblebee. And we'll see these bees come up again in just a minute. Give Bees a Chance. Words and Picture by Bethany Barton. This is my best bud, Edgar. We love all the same things, like board games and dinosaurs and strawberries and honey, and of course, bees. Well, except that I don't really like bees. Well, sure you do. Didn't I tell you that there are about 25,000 different kinds of bees to love? Everything from what we talked about just a bit ago, the squash bee and the eastern carpenter bee and the European honeybee and the horn-faced bee and the sweat bee. And well, maybe I might like bees. And then I told you all about the 3 types of honeybees. So for instance, there's the queen, and there's just one of those per a hive. And they make all the baby bees. And then there's the drones. And there's about 300 to 500 of those per the hive. And they're the large males. They don't have a stinger. And they're always in search of a queen to mate with. And finally, the workers. The worker bees in a hive, there can be 30 to 80,000 worker bees. And they're small, sterile females with stingers. They gather the nectar. They do everything. They do the work. They get water. They make honey. They feed the baby bees. They build and protect the hive. They make royal jelly, on and on. But oh, wait a minute. Just get those bees away from me. Whew, thanks. Like I was saying, I just don't like bees. Well, mostly because of their stingers and the attached venom sacs, which are the cause of these painful bee stings. That's the part I told you about last week. And in here you see Edgar may have met a super mean bee, met the super mean stinger. He got the ouch. And of course, Edgar really gave off some brave tears. But keep in mind, Edgar, that was just one bee. Couldn't you still give bees a chance? Maybe I just need to remind you how weird and cool the honeybee anatomy is. For instance, they have 5 eyes. They have 3 tiny simple eyes and 2 large compound eyes with thousands of lenses. They have 2 stomachs. So for instance, they have a honey stomach, or they call it the crop, for turning nectar into honey. The bee stomach is for digesting the nectar. Then of course they have 4 wings. They lock together for flying, and then they come apart for easy storage. And finally, they have 6 legs, complete with a pollen basket. And that's an area on the hind legs. That's this area right here that can store almost 1 million grains of pollen. But even Edgar says, look, stinger equals ouch. Maybe you just need some time to get to know them. How about millions of years? Did you know that the bees lived with dinosaurs? That scientists have found fossils, and that even the ancient Egyptians kept bees. In fact, honey from bees was found in Egyptian tombs. And believe it or not, it was still edible. And if you don't know what edible means, it means someone could still eat it. And Edgar says, oh, honey. Perfect. You just need some honey. Bees make honey. Why are you telling me all this? So that you'll give bees a chance. Once you learn how great they are, you're bound to fall in love with them. Check out how honey is made. It goes from a bee gathering nectar from flowers. The nectar goes into a special stomach. We call that the crop, right? Contents of the crop are spit up into a new bee's mouth. The new bee breaks that down. The nectar is then passed to another bee, several more bees. And with each breakdown, the nectar in their stomach keeps going on until it becomes honey. Then the honey gets barfed into a honeycomb cell and fanned by the wings of the bees to evaporate the moisture. And lastly, it's sealed with beeswax to keep it safe. Edgar wonders, did you say barf? So just 1 pound of honey takes 2 million flowers and thousands of bees to create. And Edgar, too many bees. It looks like I haven't convinced you just yet. Edgar says no, because they're all going to sting me. You know, bees do sting sometimes, but not because they're mean. Bees sting to defend themselves or to avoid getting squished or smashed. In fact, many bees lose their stinger after attacking. So if you can imagine, that's like your hand disappearing if you pinch your sister. Okay, Edgar, what are you wearing? I'm wearing bee armor. That's not going to work. Well, it was designed for dragons, and I think it can handle bees. Well, there's a kind of armor that beekeepers wear. It looks quite a bit different. It allows them to collect honey and beeswax without getting stung. So they're white in color to put the bees at ease. They've got a veil to protect their eyes and their neck. These are the hive boxes where the bees build their honeycombs, and suit and gloves to cover their skin. You know, I love honey, but I'd be willing to give it up forever to never see a bee again. But giving up bees means giving up so much more than honey. Bees have a big impact on the food chain. So you see, in order for plants to grow fruits and vegetables, they need the right ingredients. A major ingredient they need is pollen. But since flowers can't move, they can't always get pollen from each other. So this flower says to the other flower, I want to make strawberries, so throw me some flowers. The other flower says, I don't have any arms. So that's where bees fly in. A bee's fuzzy body catches pollen from flowers. The pollen falls into the next flower, just like you did that activity. And they act as a pollen delivery service, helping give flowers the ingredients they need. A single bee can visit over 1,000 flowers a day, making bee pollination powers unparalleled, which means without bees, there'd be a lot less yummy stuff to eat. But unfortunately, bees are disappearing in very large numbers. Bees actually need our help. Okay, so I take it back. I don't want bees gone. I even sort of want to help them, as long as they don't sting me. So planting bee-friendly flowers is a great way to help the bee population. But won't that attract more bees? Well, hopefully, yes. But just approach a bee like you would a dog you don't know. Don't get too close. Don't try to touch it. And unless you're a flower, it should lose interest and fly away. And if more people like you give bees a chance, well, it just may, a chance to make the world a sweeter place. So now have I told you how much I love bears? So that's a great book. It's called Give Bees a Chance. It's by Words and Pictures by Bethany Barton, and you can find that at your local library. I think it says it talks a lot about those bees and how important they are. So as you're thinking about some outdoor activities, and I'm going to switch my camera here and come back here, and obviously then change my background. So you've got yourself the outdoor challenge. And what I'd like you to do is take an opportunity and go outside. Go outside tonight, go outside tomorrow, and observe those pollinators, those bees, those butterflies, those hummingbirds. Notice them at night, and that's when you'll notice the bats. that bats might be flying around your yard just about the time the sun goes down. Even flies and beetles and moths are pollinators. But remember to do it at a safe distance and draw a picture of all the pollinators that you observe. You could even take a picture with the camera on your phone. When you go outside and you look for the pollinators, remember those steps to take care of them. We now understand why pollinators are important, right? Because of the vegetables and fruits and all the pollination that they do. You don't need to be afraid of pollinators. They're probably more afraid of you than you are of them. And then remember to always respect pollinators at a safe distance. So if you get an opportunity and you go out tonight or go out tomorrow and begin to look at pollinators, take some pictures. You can send those to as an email to education@PBS Western Reserve, and we'll hope to be able to show those at our next exploration. And your family activity, if you have an opportunity, go with your family and organize a pollinator scavenger hunt. I know as a kid, when we traveled, we look at license plates and we'd look at the letters on the license plates and identify the different states. Think about that with your pollinator scavenger hunt, and yell out with your family if you see a bat or you see a moth or you see a butterfly or you see an animal that acts as a pollinator. Use the bee culture, look at bee culture websites and visit a local beekeeper, and then find and visit some pollinator friendly gardens. It might be one that's just down the road at a neighbor's house. And then get an opportunity to send pictures to education@PBS Western Reserve. So now that we've learned about pollinators, let's take a closer look at flower gardens. And so we're going to ask the question, I wonder why they're so important. So on the screen, we've got lots of different flowers that are out there, and I wonder why they are so important. And as always, we have a big idea. And the big idea for today is, flower gardens aren't just beautiful places for you to enjoy. They create a food and homes for insects and other animals. Gardens also help clean the air by changing carbon dioxide into oxygen for all of us to breathe. And you can plant a garden almost anywhere, even in some unsuspected places. So let's take a look at what the crew of Cyberchase is doing when they start to think about building a community garden.
We're thinking we can turn this space into a garden.
For Ren's Valentine's Day party.
But I know this is your property, Miss Marigold. So only if it's okay with you.
A garden. Here?
Uh-huh. Just think about it. Ren will have a place for his party, and better than that, you'll have a beautiful garden for your neighborhood.
I'm still not sure.
Think of it this way, Ms. Marigold. Gardens aren't just beautiful. They help clean the air, and they can be good for you, too.
Yeah, just imagine sitting in your lawn chair, smelling the flowers, hearing the birds chirp. Doesn't that sound peaceful?
I feel better just thinking about it. If you want to make a garden, go for it.
So, how do we get this garden started?
Oh, just a little planning, organization, and a diagram. First, we need to know just how much space we have to work with.
Maddie, grab an end of this measuring tape. 20 cyber feet long and 5 cyber feet wide.
One garden diagram, 20 by 5 cyber feet. Done.
What's next?
Figuring out how many flowers we need.
Ren, how far apart do you want the flowers to be?
Well, they need to be far enough apart so they have room to grow. I'd say a foot apart should work.
Great. So let's grid the diagram with 1-foot squares. Grid completed.
Now let's count the squares so we know how many plants we need.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's gotta be a faster way.
There is. We can skip count. There are 5 rows, and since each row is 20 feet long, there are 20 squares in each row, right? So, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. 100 squares.
So if we put one plant in each square, we'll need 100 plants.
Ooh, think of all the ways we can set up a garden with 100 plants. We can put red roses here. Ooh, green lilacs there.
This garden is gonna look awesome. Wow, you really can make a garden anywhere.
So let's think a minute about what did you see that might make a home in the Carroll Street garden? What did the garden have that those animals needed? So let's think about that for a minute. And then talk in your group or talk to your parents about what do you think was really important about those community gardens. And then what did you think the kids and the other people living in Butland got from the garden? So think about those questions when you watch that video. What did they get out of that community garden? Well, our next activity is going to be what we call the recycled community garden. And in this activity, I had sent out information to you ahead of time, and it talked about if you've got recycled paper and popsicle sticks and cardboard tubes, let me show you what I want you to do is kind of look up all those recycled materials, and I want you to be crafty. So let me show you. I'm going to quit sharing the screen here, and I'm going to let you see my screen, and you can see that I've put together a bunch of different things to do some crafts, right? So I've got things like glue, and I've got some paper tubes, toilet paper tubes. I've got things like this is kind of nice and soft and squishy kind of construction paper. I've got my markers. I've got my scissors. And if you've got scissors, you may want to let mom and dad help you with those. I've got straws and I've got popsicle sticks. And that's what I want you to do is kind of look at building some flowers with all of these types of materials, these recycled materials. So you can do things like put some straws together and make petals for a flower. You could color, your tube here and begin to make a flower this way. I didn't grab my collection here. I forgot to grab some popsicle sticks. I don't know where they are. I've got them right here. I've got some popsicle sticks that you could glue together. So what I want you to do is get your materials that you gathered up, your mom and dad or your grandma, grandpa, or your family child care provider put together for you. So, and I'm not very creative, but before we went online today, I created my own little flower. And I did it with popsicle sticks and a cardboard tube and some straws for petals. And that's my recycled flower. So what I'd like you to do, I'm gonna go back to the screen, and I would like you to we're gonna go about 3 minutes and work on building your own flower, and then we'll share those out when we come back. So spend about 3 minutes. We won't use this whole timer. All right, I know that I gave you a little less than 5 minutes to do but I hope you had an opportunity to look at your flowers, build your flowers from recycled materials, and really begin to think about where would you, if you put a flower garden together, where do you think you would put that flower? Let's think about that for a minute. And meanwhile, think about these questions. Think about, where do you think plants can grow? Can they grow anywhere? They have an opportunity to grow anywhere, or are there specific places that plants have to grow? Why are those community gardens so important? So think about that for a minute. And then what are the benefits? The Cyberchase folks had some real benefits for a community garden, but think about what those benefits of a community garden would be. And with that, let's do another read aloud. And our next read aloud it's called Planting a Rainbow by Lois Ehlert. Ehlert, I think is how it's pronounced, and I apologize. So let me go over here I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to open my video, and we're going to throw a book called Planting a Rainbow by Lois Ehlert. Every year, Mom and I plant a rainbow. In the fall, we buy some bulbs and we plant them in the ground. And as you see, we've got tiger lily bulbs, we have red tulip bulbs, orange tulip bulbs, yellow daffodils, blue hyacinth, purple crocus, and the purple bearded iris rhizome. How about that for bulbs? And then we order seeds from catalogs and we wait all winter long. And we get seeds like phlox and morning glories and zinnias and asters and cornflowers, marigolds and daisies. For spring, we wait till spring to warm the soil and sprout those bulbs. So you see the bulbs, the tulips and the daffodils and the hyacinths and the crocuses are all starting to sprout. Then it's time to go to the garden center and select some seedlings. So as you see, they picked up roses and poppies and delphiniums, pansies and ferns and carnations. And then we sow those seeds and set the plants in soil. So now you see those roses and those tiger lilies and the daisies, the zinnias, the morning glories, all of these different plants now are in the soil. And then we watch the rainbow grow. So now you're seeing the tiger lilies and the carnations and the daisies. Those are all growing now, including the zinnias and the pansies. And they grow and they grow. And when we're done, we have red flowers like carnations and roses and tulips. And we have some orange flowers like zinnias and tulips and poppies and tiger lilies. And just like the rainbow, we have yellow blooms like marigolds and daisies and daffodils. How many folks have daffodils that come up in the spring? Then we grow something green. Here they have ferns, but I'll bet you in your yards, you might have those things that are called hostas. And they've got all different kinds of different green colors. And then we have some blue flowers like morning glories and delphiniums and hyacinths and cornflowers. And just like the rainbow, we've got purple flowers. And that's things like flowers like phlox and iris and violets and asters. And then all summer long, we pick them and bring the flowers home. And when summer is over, we know we can grow our rainbow again next year. That's the book, Planting a Rainbow by Lois Ehlert. Trying not to mess that up too bad for you there. So as we continue and we talk about now the family activity that I'd like you to do, and let me get some changes here real quick, and I will let me get this change real quick for you. So what I'd like you to do for your family activity is visit a local botanical garden or a community garden to see the benefits. If you don't have a local garden, you can spend time in a park or a backyard space that has some flowers or plants. And then we'd love you to record your observations, draw a picture, maybe write a poem, create a piece of art, take a picture with your cell phone and take a pretty picture with your cell phone of that garden plot or of a flower or of a really colorful arrangements of flowers. And then we'll get together again. Our next session, and let me just get a couple things back up on screen here. We really appreciate your time attending the Green It Up virtual session. We featured pollinators and flower gardens, and we learned a lot about those pollinators, and we learned a lot about the importance of flower gardens. So make sure you stay tuned, or available on our website will be the next virtual session. That's featuring fruit and veggie container gardens, as well as composting. If you're joining it live, that'll happen tomorrow night. If you're not, you should be able to find that on our webpage, our project webpage. Actually, if you go up in the top right corner, you'll see a QR code. And if you focus on that with your phone, that'll take you to the Cyberchase Green It Up webpage. Maybe, just maybe, if some folks attend through our virtual sessions, if you attend those sessions, we'd really like to get information about you. So we'll send you out a Cyberchase Green It Up family activity guide, as well as some really cool Cyberchase Green It Up jotter notebooks, so you can keep track of your Green It Up explorations. And once again, thank you so much. For the latest information about the Cyberchase Green It Up, follow that URL code, or that QR code rather, in your upper corner. Follow the URL if you'd like. Thank you so much for watching this video and attending tonight. And we really appreciate you watching the programs and being part of our PBS Western Reserve family. Have a great night, everyone.